3 years, Qatar has been an island in the Gulf as a result of a blockade that froze travel and trade with its closest neighbors. The peninsula's isolation could soon come to an end as Saudi Arabia warms up to the idea of restoring ties with its fellow oil-rich nation.
So from the beginning, we've been committed to resolving the rift with Qatar, and the late Emir of Kuwait worked very hard to facilitate the discussions to reach a conclusion to that. The current new Emir of Kuwait continues to be committed to that same track, and we are as well committed to those discussions.
The deal is expected to reopen Saudi skies to Qatari aircraft and allow land crossings to resume. That would deprive Iran of what diplomats estimate is $100 million that Qatar pays for the use of its airspace. Negotiations brokered by Kuwait have received additional prodding from Washington. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Middle East envoy Jared Kushner were in the region last month to help see the potential deal through. However, Saudi Arabia's partners Bahrain, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates will not be part of the agreement. The four nations had accused Qatar of bankrolling militant groups to help Iran. Doha's denied those allegations.
It will need to address the legitimate security concerns of the countries in the quartet that we have raised, and until we are able to find a way that addresses satisfactorily our concerns, we won't be able to resolve the issue.
While the blockade never resulted in widespread shortages of goods, Qatar's GDP shrank 0.3% last year. And the economic impact of the pandemic has increased the pressure on all parties to patch things up and face the crisis together. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, let's go to Luciano Zaccara. He's a professor at Qatar University's Gulf Studies Centre in Doha. Welcome to the program, Professor. Now, these reports that the blockade between Saudi Arabia and Qatar emerged soon after Jared Kushner met with Qatar's Emir. What are you hearing in Doha? Are the two sides, in fact, close to announcing some sort of a deal?
Well, I mean, supposedly we are closer than ever before, but this doesn't mean that we are getting close to a final deal or a final arrangement. I mean, of course, these days everybody's talking, everybody's asking. Supposedly there is something going on, but it was reported by several news outlets, even Al Jazeera. And everybody's discussing about the possibility of this deal. But however, there is nothing concrete yet. Nobody really expected that a definitive deal will be reached before the GCC summit that is going to be mid-December. And actually, if there is a deal, probably is expected to be announced during that meeting, and in a way to materialize that in shaking hands, etc., etc. But as the report mentioned, as your own report mentioned, not everybody seems to be happy with this agreement. Neither Bahrain or Emirates are supposedly involved in this agreement that, as we all know, so far conditions have not been established yet. We don't know exactly what would be the terms of this agreement if it's that Saudi decided to eliminate the blockade and allow the use of airspace to Qatar Airways without nothing in exchange. If there is something that is going to be in exchange, I mean, if there will be concessions on both sides. We heard the Saudi official claiming that Qatar needs to comply with the security concerns of the GCC or the Quartet, concerns that Qatar had denied since a long time ago, and that nobody really took seriously. The main concerns or the main accusations from the Saudi side were related to Qatar relations with Iran, Qatar hosting a base from Turkey army, and closing Al Jazeera. So if these were the three main security concerns, cannot be considered legitimate enough for Qatar to make any concessions about that.
Okay.
So it's still not clear what would be the terms of these negotiations.
Now, we know that Qatar was highly dependent on those air, sea and land routes across the Gulf to import most of its goods and produce. Can you tell us more about how the 3-year plus blockade has impacted Qatar's economy?
Of course, Qatar's economy has been affected, like most of the countries that they are under a blockade. Of course, the costs grew much higher because Qatar Airways. Most of the or almost everything came through air. This implied that the cost of the freight has been much higher than ever before, having in mind that Qatar Airways airplane had to make a longer routes. But you honestly cannot see the impact here. Maybe the prices went higher in some aspects, but the point is that the pandemic that started February, March this year affected not only Qatar, but most of the economies depending on oil. The GCC, Iran, Iraq, all the countries in the region were affected heavily. So it's very difficult to discriminate which of the impact or the economic impact were more related to the blockade, comparing with the impact that the pandemic had on Qatari economy. What the government says is that the Qatari government has been resilient in tackling all the effects of the economy. Of course, Qatar Airways has been supported by the government in order to avoid bigger harm. But again, the pandemic affected much more the Qatari economy than actually the blockade. And actually, the blockade contributed to the diversification of Qatari economy in a way that some of the products that they were imported before started to be produced here in Qatar. In terms of food production, in terms of some basic products that before were brought from Emirates or from Saudi Arabia, constructions, items, etc., started to be either imported from Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan, or produced directly here. So, the impact was negative to some extent in terms of costs, but it was positive in terms of diversification of the Qatari industry, Qatari production.
Okay, well, we'll see if the two sides announce something in the coming days or weeks. But for now, Luciano Zaccara in Doha, thank you again for joining us on the program.